G'day, welcome to Deep and Meaningfuls with Furzey. Now there's three things I love in life: exploring the mind, tripping balls, and a good deep chat. And my guest on this episode is no stranger to all three of these things. Her name is Shannon Burgess, and she is trained in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. Now this is pretty cutting-edge stuff. Mainstream medicine doesn't really want a bar of it, and it's still illegal in a lot of places. But it works. Research indicates that psychedelic-assisted therapy has an estimated 71% success rate. Things you're going to learn in this episode: what it feels like to smoke the psychedelic poison from a toad, some of the flaws that can come from traditional psych meds, how to embrace challenging emotions, some true stories of transformation, and a lot more. I admire Shannon's courage in going down this path because, as taboo as it is, I'm learning that it can really lead the way in improving mental health. So here is my conversation with Shannon Burgess. Let's talk about what's happened in the last 10 years. Like how did you, because I'm super keen to talk to you about psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy.
Yeah.
How did you get to a point of being a practitioner?
Yes. Oh, where do I begin? So I think that the key turning point for me in terms of going into psychedelics was in 2022, at the end of 22. So, COVID was... COVID was COVID,
yeah.
And has a whole
peak of the madness.
The madness, and so that was for me actually a really distressing time because I work energetically as well. Like I could just feel the anxiety, the anger, like the distress of like the collective, but also my own personal preferences, my own beliefs about what was going on. And so I just remember that being such a shit time, not actually because I was in lockdown. I quite enjoyed being in lockdown.
I did too, if I'm honest. Yeah.
It's like I got to work from home. I had my Ugg boots on.
Yeah.
When I had a moment, I could put some washing on. As a single parent, like that was actually really great. So there were some really beautiful things about it. And I think that when we slowed down in COVID, it really gave us the opportunity to evaluate a whole bunch of things and where our life was and where it was taking us. So
it really damaged a lot of people though, so badly. Like you're talking end of 22.
Yeah.
One thing, sorry to cut you off, but one thing that I've noticed now, and it stayed, was all these businesses started putting up signs that said, "We will not tolerate abusive behaviour." Yeah. We never saw those before COVID.
No.
And now they came up during COVID, during lockdown and when the ins and outs of lockdown, and they haven't left.
Yeah. It's had a profound effect on how we live life.
Yeah.
It's really profound. And I think the divisiveness that took place and the fear that was used to control people was what was really frightening. And as a psychologist, what I couldn't get my head around was other psychologists witnessing the gaslighting, the manipulation and the control that was taking place, yet we weren't saying anything or doing anything. Now, the reason for that was because our professional body that regulates us actually said if we express any opinions publicly, we were at risk of losing our license. So
do a lot of doctors too.
Exactly. Well, because we're all governed by the same body.
Oh,
so
yes.
anyone in the health profession that's governed by this body,
any health professional,
was suppressed. So if you want to talk about like the medical aspect of it, the people who know that part best were suppressed. People who, like me, can look at the manipulation and all of the divisiveness that took place, we were suppressed. So everybody that actually had a valid perspective and is educated and a professional were all forced to be quiet at the risk of losing their homes, their livelihood, like all the things which I totally have compassion for. And that's
only forced to be quiet if you were dissenting.
Totally, yes.
You were allowed to say whatever you wanted,
exactly.
as long as you can pick any colour as long as it's red.
Absolutely. Kind of if you want to comply with the narrative, go for it. Yeah. And so it was interesting because even I shared a post once which I think, in our innocence, like as humans, we're all trying to find our place anyway. And so sometimes we experiment with edges, like we post things, we say things, because we're just trying to find where is my place in this world and what's my voice. And I remember sharing a post and it was It was like a sensitive post. And the person that I was subcontracting to at the time actually reached out and contacted me and said, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. And this was like a male authority figure that I looked up to, you know, and it kind of, and so I sort of sat with it and I just thought, is this post and is this issue big enough for me to engage in some kind of conflict and actually make it a thing? And I just wasn't ready. So I took the post down and I just kind of went back into my shell and just decided to speak my truth with people who I felt safe or comfortable with and just choose to live in alignment with my values and my beliefs as opposed to getting caught up in the collective because I don't think I could cope. Like it was too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
I'm the same. I'm the same. I feel like we share the same opinion on the way this all went.
Yeah.
And I chose not to. I had one friend who we would talk every day and we would get our fill of kind of ranting about the way we were being treated and what was really going on.
Yeah.
But publicly, Laura was pregnant and we had a baby on the way and I was like, I can't bring any heat into my life with this because if you do, you hate grandma.
Yeah.
It was basically, you're going to kill grandma. That was
yeah.
It was all of that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it was kind of pick your battles and am I ready to die on this hill at the moment? And good on the people that did have the courage to do that. Yeah. Because I think it was really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at this point in my life, and we're doing a podcast and we're both talking about it, but it was crazy. And it was, and people were worn down for a couple of years.
Years and years, and now we're seeing the fallout of it. Like now it's like we thought we seen it back then. It's like now you're seeing the consequence of like those businesses that struggled back then, families who lost, middle-aged men to suicide because they were the primary provider of the families. Like it was that at the time I knew that in the background that was unfolding. And it was just really distressing, like, to feel it on a human level that we turned against one another was really sad. Like for me, it just felt so sad.
Yeah.
So, it was sort of 2022, I had been working from home a lot of the time and then
as a psychologist?
Yeah.
Tell me the difference. Psychotherapist, psychologist, psychiatrist.
So psychiatrists are doctors that go and specialise then in psychiatry. So they go in, so kind of like an orthopaedic surgeon that goes and specialises. Psychiatrists go and do that extra training to be, so they're medical, but they work with the mind. And
they are the ones that can prescribe psychiatric meds.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Psychologists, we basically train to work with human behaviour, and part of that, might include research. Some psychologists stay in research. Some, like me, what you would say is a psychotherapist where we provide intervention. So, and then some people, look, I don't know, I guess some people call themselves psychotherapists. Maybe they've gone and done a psychotherapy training, as in training in therapy. I believe, but don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure, that there's like an institute that, an organisation that can be regulated as psychotherapists. But I think that what they probably train in is more counselling and therapeutic support, as opposed to what we train in is diagnosis of mental health, looking at interventions. Yeah, so that's why, my degree was 4 years plus 2 postgrad, so 6 years in total.
Yeah, so drastically different situation to doing a coaching course.
Totally, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, so I'd worked at home a lot. And then, it was the end of 22 and I chose to leave the practice that I was subcontracting to and to go out on my own. And I just remember like being at home and just being like, this can't be all life is about. Like this fucking can't be my life. Like, I've done the training, I've done the baby, like I've done these things, I've bought the house, and I'm like, this can't be it. Like I felt so empty. And it's not the first time, we all experience like, emotions and they move and flow and we have hard times and good times. But it was this like, I'm not available to live life like this for another 40 years. I'm 43 now, so I was 41 then. I was like, I'm not available for this. And I remember just being like, show me how good it gets to be, because this is not it. This can't be it.
could have gone the other way too.
Could have absolutely gone the other way. Yeah, absolutely. And so that could have been around November 2022. And around January 23, a friend in New Zealand reached out to me. And it's interesting because our energies are always aligning. Like we'll kind of go in our own direction and work, and especially during COVID, I think we were all just trying to cope and we're all managing whatever we were doing.
Yeah.
And then we always kind of like, move back in harmony with one another again. And whatever we go away and do on our own, it's always in alignment. We don't even know it, but we're getting to the same place, but just in different ways. So we came back together and we were chatting, and I shared with her how I'd been feeling and just where I was at. And she said, have you heard about psilocybin? And I was like, no. And then she's mushrooms. And I was like, oh, yeah. I said, it's funny that you say that, because I started to explore it in the background as this really random thing. And the funny thing is, just as a side note, I caught up with this guy once. He wanted to know about psychology, and he was a friend's, brother-in-law, and he wanted to know about psychology. So we went for a beach walk one day to chat. But we stopped at a cafe and to get a coffee on the way. And on the shelf they had, how they have the bottles of mushrooms?
Oh, the tinctures.
The tinctures, yeah. So they had those there. And so, we were just kind of joking about it. He's into psychedelics. And we started joking about it. And the words that came out of my mouth were, yeah, I want to train to work with psychedelics. And it was kind of a lie and a truth at the same time.
Oh, so you hadn't really given it that much thought?
No.
That's interesting.
So, but the words came out, and I'd crossed my mind I was curious.
Yeah.
But no, that it was a lie in hindsight, and I don't lie, right? So I was like,
maybe consciously, but a subconscious truth.
It was a truth. It was a full-on truth that I didn't even know. And so this is what's interesting, is how the body tells the truth.
Wow, it's because I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and I've gone and seen him twice, and he's got his flaws and his pros and his cons, but I've gotten a lot out of his teachings.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said that I've always found really fascinating was, as a clinical therapist, he would say that people don't know how to think, so you have to either write or talk. And he was like, my job is, he goes, the majority of the time I need to prompt people to talk.
Yeah.
And then when they're talking, they actually figure out their own problems. He goes, it's not my job to figure out your problems.
Yeah.
It's like my job to help you figure out your problems. And that is exactly like you're sitting there, you're comfortable, you're talking with a friend, and you tell the truth that you didn't realize was the truth.
Absolutely. Well, there's a saying, and I can't remember who says it, but it's, I know what I think as I hear myself speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's even a meme on social media, and it's like
so true.
And it's like two people, and it's like, the image is like a ball of wool that's knotted in one person's head. And what you see is it come out and transfer to the other person, where it kind of gets wrapped up neatly.
Yes.
And this is the process of integration that takes place, right? As we speak and we make sense and meaning, we don't get rid of anything, but we put it in a neat little package that it can just coexist with us. Mm-hmm. It's not removing anything from us. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that was kind of an interesting side note. So
now that it had come out, you're like, oh, okay, so now you're exploring that.
Yeah. So then I was kind of like, okay. And I can't remember if I, listened to anything, watch podcasts, but the way my world works is things drop in. And I don't know if it's because I'm an Aquarian, and Aquarians are related to technology. And obviously we're kind of going to the age of Aquarius, and technology is like ramping up. But the way spirit kind of communes with me often is through technology. So I will open up my phone and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to watch a podcast on, astrology. But a podcast will come up on something random, but it will grab my attention because it's something I've been thinking about, or it's something I feel called to watch. And I go and watch it, and there'll be literally embedded in it the very thing I was pondering on, not sure about, or if I see a client later that day, it will be relevant to them. It's weird.
Interesting. Now, just to play devil's advocate, do you think that part of that could be because that is where your attention is and you could be looking for it?
Oh, I guess some of the things have been so random that like even when I got into psychedelics, it literally popped up. Like, and it's not like, with AI, we're like, does our phone hear us? Which clearly it does, because it's like you talk about something and an ad pops up. But some of this is stuff I haven't even spoken out loud about.
Yeah, right.
It's just internal ponderings, or like I say, sometimes it'll be, let's just say if it's about something about infidelity, and I'll go and watch a podcast on it, or somebody, there's a few people that I follow. And then I'll go and see a client that day. And it's like I heard the very thing that person needed to hear. And I was almost like a conduit. Like I needed to hear that so I could translate that and transfer that over to this person.
Yeah. I know exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so fascinating, that, isn't it? I often think about the relationship with our this is a Jung thing, the shadow and the unconscious mind, and how much it controls our conscious minds. Yet our little, monkey arrogance thinks that, no, I'm the one driving the bus. I'm hungry because I've decided it's lunchtime. It's got nothing to do with,
exactly
my bodily functions and our emotional state is, we think we're in control of it and
Absolutely.
all this. And it's just really intriguing to wonder how much of these things are being driven by our unconscious. Yet our conscious mind really wants to take the credit.
Exactly. It's like you get a great idea. Oh, I'm going to start a podcast. Oh my God, I'm so smart.
Yes.
And soul is like,
We've been pushing you to this for years,
Yeah.
You're trying to get you to get off your ass.
Exactly. We put it in front of you several times. Finally, you're ready to take it up, right?
Yes.
So anyway, back to my friend, she says, have you heard about psilocybin, ... So that opens up a conversation, and that actually opened up the opportunity for me to have my first psychedelic experience.
Okay.
So I hadn't experimented as a kid with psychedelics, like I hadn't gone down that road. So that was my first experience. So
opening the door in your 40s.
Yeah, in my 40s.
Cool.
And not only did I open the door in my 40s, I went to the most potent medicine that you could use. So I went to 5-MeO DMT.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that for anyone who doesn't know what that is. I mean, well, let me tell you something. I've never done that. I remember seeing a video of a woman doing 5-MeO DMT. She's a Western woman. She's in Peru probably. And this was on a Reddit thread, and I saw her talking about it first, and then there's a video of what happened to her. And the account that she's saying is just, the best way to put it is just complete and utter existential dread, and nothingness, like a complete lack of all meaning that she got stuck with.
Yeah.
And the footage is really, really harrowing.
Yeah.
She's just screaming. She's just in absolute terror. And there's like a shaman standing there just kind of, letting her roll around on the ground screaming. And she never really, I don't think from her account, she never really recovered. Now, of course, that's polar negative. That's really, really, really terrible.
Yeah.
But the ability, the fact that something has the ability to send someone there, if you're maybe don't have the right set or setting,
exactly,
this is powerful shit.
Yeah. My experience with that medicine as well, and having witnessed other people, is I've come to understand the medicine better, and I'm really grateful, I would say, to have seen some people have not the experiences that I've had. So it's given me perspective and to be more educated around it. And I think that 5-MeO is, so it's only been around for about, I think, maybe around 20 years. It's kind of come back. So obviously it's medicine. It's always, been in existence somewhere. But it's really come back in the last, say, 20 years. And I think there's a guy who wrote a book about it. I can't remember his name, but he wrote about how it actually came through an ayahuasca journey. So someone had an ayahuasca journey, and then this came up about this medicine. So they went and found it, in the desert, and then started accessing it again. And what I understand of it,
well, just that in itself is amazing. Even ayahuasca, how the local people just managed to find these two completely different plants to combine together.
Totally.
Out of the thousands of plants in the jungle.
Yeah.
Because the plants told them.
Totally. And I understand it now. Like, I didn't understand it before, but now I do. And it's like, But when you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And it just seems so foreign.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things that now make sense. And it's there's that saying, like, hidden in plain sight. Like, all of it is literally hidden in plain sight. Like,
we were just talking about that with you today. Yeah. Laurel and I were just talking about it. I was saying, why did we not ask Shannon to do the podcast sooner? Because you're exactly the kind of person that I want to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, because you're just too close. You're right here. Laurel just did a thing with let's get Shannon on here.
Yeah. And I made an offhand comment. I was like, I need to be on there and talk to him. She goes, yeah, you do. And then that was it. Like, it was just random.
Yeah.
So, but when you go into the medicine journeys, like I say, the thing that I've come to know is that everything that we have heard, known, all of it makes sense, not on an intellectual level, but on an embodied level. And that's when then change can be made manifest, right? That's when we then show up differently. So I think that with the 5-MeO, it was reportedly, because I don't really know 100%, but it was reportedly used for higher initiates, people who had done the work. People who were really ready to go to that next level use that medicine. So now it makes total sense to me why some people just aren't ready and they have those experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is like slamming tequila shots for your first time you're drinking alcohol.
Absolutely.
That's a great way of putting it, I guess. This is no joke.
No.
And even people, and I think the more initiated one is, the more cautious you probably are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you went, but you didn't know any of that. You went straight in.
I went straight in.
Wow. And you made it out the other side. Thank God.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm very, I've always been intuitive. I've always just trusted my gut. And every time I haven't, it's been wrong. And so I've come to really know that. There's people I surround myself with, and I know, their purity and their truth. And so I put absolute trust in the people that are in my world, or you're not in my world. It's as simple as that. So my friend that invited me along, just kind of said, yeah, come. And I said, okay. So I jumped on a plane and, went to New Zealand. And I remember sitting at a table like this with the shaman and, getting prepared, and she talked about it, just prepping us, and she said how the toad, because that's how, we get the medicine.
Oh, it's from the toad, yes.
Yeah. So the medicine comes from the toad. So this is it's such a beautiful story. The toad is located in the desert where a drug cartel is. Right. So it literally has a drug cartel almost protecting it because then people can't come and abuse it.
Yeah, wow.
They can't come and farm it because it's a scary place to go.
Of course. So is this is a rare toad?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it's the Bufo alivarius. I think I always say that second part wrong. Alivarius or alivaris. And it basically lives underground for 11 months of the year, and it comes up for 1 month.
Wow.
Crazy.
Is that different from Cambo?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting confused. Okay, so let's draw that distinction.
Yeah, so when people talk about toads, they often are referring to Cambo.
Psychedelic frogs, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even that in itself is just psychedelic. The frogs, because you get these beautifully psychedelically, if that's a word, coloured frogs.
Yeah.
You would think that they'd be psychedelic, and they fucking are. Yeah. Well, maybe not those ones, but frogs in general.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
So they live underground, and because I'm obsessed with astrology as well, I think of Pluto, and Pluto is like the lord of the underworld, right?
Yes.
And when we think about where the riches are, they're underground. Like, we mine for riches, and we go deep within, and we go into the dark and into the cold, and that's where riches are found. So I just find it so beautiful, this parallel, that's actually where these toads spend the majority of their time, and they only come up to bring the gold like 1 month out of every year.
Wow.
Which is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they basically go, and people who go and, get the medicine are very careful because obviously they want to protect the frogs. Like, they don't want, abuse them and harm them in any way. So they basically go and withdraw the venom. I think it's like behind their back legs or something, my shaman was saying. And then they like, they wear gloves and everything to not like, give the frogs diseases or anything, put them back, and then off they go again. So the shaman was explaining all of this, and then she says, I think one of us said, okay, like how long does the journey last for? And she says, oh, like, you're in the thick of it for probably, like 7 to 10 minutes and then something or other. And I remember sitting there being like, oh, like I flew all the way here.
That's
for
underwhelming.
Like 7 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Little did you know.
Little did I know. And she says, but it's timeless, da 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 da.
Yeah. Like you can say these things, but that doesn't mean anything.
Again, it's the resonance, right? You don't know what it means until you know what it means.
Yeah.
So I would go, okay. Anyway, I'm like, look, I went there with no expectations. I'd watched a video and I think I'd seen more people. People were just really calm in the videos. They didn't really move. And then they came out of it and just talked about like letting go of anger, feeling completely transformed, things that they were holding on to, just feeling nothing but like love and peace in them. And I was like, that's cool. I want that. So I was like, you know what? I'm not here to judge, or like I'm open to the experience. So I think I went like 4th out of about 10 of us, and
with mild disappointment. Something for 20 minutes, but
I was
7
like, then so we were looking outside. We're at this beautiful place in New Zealand, and the first woman went outside and had a journey, and she's just like laying there, and I was like, is it even working? Like, what's going on? And then after a while, she started to like stand up, and I was like, she's done. Like, what is this? It was like non-eventful, right? And then next minute, she just like takes her top off, and we're like, that's weird. What is going on? Anyway, that was kind of about it. And she comes back inside, but she has this look on her face, and she's just like, and she just gives us a hug. And she just hugged me with so much love and was like, like I can feel it now. And I was like, what happened? Something profound happened. So a few people went before me, because I think I went 4th.
You drink it?
No, you smoke it.
Oh, you smoke it?
Yeah. So the shaman says, like you'll know, like if you have to ask me if it's working, it's not, because So and also what normally happens is as you inhale it, you literally people will either just kind of go still, or you just fall back and she'll support you to fall back. So it's not an external experience. It's not like when you go and do mushrooms or other psychedelics like LSD, where like it's very visual and outside of you.
And you want to look around. Your eyes are closed. You're very within. It's very internal, because you're essentially meeting your soul. You're meeting you in the experience, in the journey. Yeah. So I had my turn and was just, straight into it. And I remember like my mind is a real thinking mind, right? So I remember parts where my thinking mind wanted to get activated and wanted to judge and wanted to make sense of it. It's what I do. I analyze, right, for a living. So my brain's like, what's happening? Let me try and think of it so I can remember. And the beautiful shaman, because she sings you into it. So she's got all of the songs. She goes and, trains in the jungle and, connects to her teachers there. So she brings those transmissions back. So I could feel her presence and her singing in, and all I can remember is hearing the words like surrender, surrender. The irony is my tattoo here is the word surrender written in mirror image. So if I look it in the mirror, that's exactly what it says. So even when I got that tattoo, which was, it has to be like a decade ago, before I was even interested in any of this stuff. That's that unconscious mind again.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So all of these things had put me in the places that I needed to be without me even being aware. But again, just trusting my intuition, following along with that guidance and doing what I felt like I needed to. So, yeah, once I needed to kind of hear that surrender. And this is the thing with medicine, any medicine, as you would know, like with other medicines, if you don't feel safe and you can't surrender and drop into it, you're potentially setting yourself up for a really challenging, uncomfortable experience.
Potentially damaging.
Very damaging. Yeah.
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 That is just, I mean, you cannot reiterate that enough.
Yeah.
This is not to be messed with.
No. And it's like I have people that talk about, being able to access whether it's psilocybin, whether it's ayahuasca. And, I'm just like, just be really careful. Like when you're in that state, like I even think this with Reiki healers, I don't let anybody mess with my energy. I know my energy is pure. I know what I'm working with. And so to invite another energy into my field and open up to that, it's like I've got to know the purity of where you're coming from. And if you've just had conflict with your husband, if you've just been in some shit show and you come and bring that into my field and I'm open, no fucking way. No way. Right? I work every day to maintain my vibrational frequency, to keep love in my heart. And when people come in and fuck with that, I'm like, no, you have to be so discerning. So discerning.
Yeah, well, that just makes me think about the inherent dynamic between men and women. Women just have to be more trusting of, I'm not saying they should be more trusting. I'm saying as a physiological, biological, energetic thing, women have no choice because men are more often than not more physically powerful and more aggressive.
Yeah.
And the women, what are your options? What I'm getting at is the courage that it takes to be a woman out there trying to meet a partner is way more than the courage that it takes for a man. I mean,
absolutely,
maybe on a different level, but to go, I'm going to trust that you are not going to physically damage me because you can.
Absolutely.
That's a heavy burden to bear, and it's one that I've become so much more aware of since becoming a father of a daughter.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this is where, and again, we could go like all the places with this, but this is where, as women, we really need to find that place where we can create safety within ourselves. And even if that's just psychological safety, right? Because sometimes our bodies are physically harmed. But can I psychologically then heal from that? Can I create safety within my essence, within my being? Because sometimes we can't control our physical safety, right? Sometimes we're placed in, positions of power where men are always going to be stronger. They're always going to dominate.
Yeah.
So, that's where, like I say, that could get into a whole other topic. But yeah, like this whole idea of like vulnerability and being willing to have these experiences in life in general, let alone when you're then going into an altered state of consciousness and you are dependent on the shaman and the
with
people
strangers,
in your crew. Yeah. So again, this is where I advise people, if you're ever going to, go into some kind of group dynamic, you really want to consider who you're doing the medicine with, because again, when you're so open, if you've got people around you that have ill intentions, that are all got all kinds of things going up, all kinds of shadows coming to the surface, and your energy field is open, right? Because that's what happens with psychedelic medicine. That's why we use it to, treat PTSD, because it gives one more capacity to work through the trauma. So we've got more bandwidth, more window of tolerance to be able to work through that and do the healing work. But if you're open and you can sense, because you're merging, so when that default mode network, that sense of self, the I-ness, we become more of a we and feel part of the world. That's kind of what happens with medicine. You feel part of people. So if you're feeling closer to people and they, are jealous, have anger, like have all kinds of shit coming up and projecting it onto you.
So much more in tune with
so much more in tune. And again, so much more damaging. So there's a lot of caution around this. And, people kind of go, oh, like I can get it. I can go pick the mushrooms. Or I can do it with my friend and this group of people. And it's like, oh, just be careful. Each to their own. I'm all about freedom, like all about personal choice. But
There are guidelines for
There
a
are
reason.
guidelines for a reason. Yeah. And this is one where there's something about working with medicine that I just am just so in reverence of, because it has just guided me in such a way and been such an important part of my life and my healing, I think. So anyway, so I'll tell you a little bit about the journey to get back to that. Yeah. So essentially, my first experience was literally the cliches. Connecting to God, source consciousness, feeling a sense of oneness. The sense that I had, I can just remember the feeling coming over my body and just that real heart opening and literally euphoria in my body, a sense of peace and euphoria at the same time. It was like everything is perfect and divine. And oh my God, like how does it get to be this good? The sense that I had, it was almost like being in the Garden of Eden. I felt like I was at the beginning of time where all of creation was available. Like everything that you want is available, like all the beautiful things. And it was like that collective consciousness, that tapestry. You know, we talk about having, you know, all beings having one mind, right? When we're connected to the collective, which is where we can talk about, you know, intuition or picking up on other people's thoughts, because we're, you know, if we look at it from a spiritual perspective, it's all consciousness. It's all one mind. And so we're all tapped into that one mind. It's why I can be over here being like, oh, I'd love to be a guest on the podcast. And you're over there going, oh, I'd love a guest to come on that's got lived experience and da-da-da-da. And then we meet.
Yes.
That's the one mind, right? That's the coming together. So I had this experience of like just immediately knowing it and sense, like feeling it and the truth of it. It's just a truth now.
It's a very hard thing to measure with scientific instruments though. So
totally.
Of course it's not true. Yeah. You know, of course it's lies.
Of course.
It's just nonsense.
It's nonsense. Yeah.
If we can't measure it with maths or with science, then it's not real.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, so there was just all like this profound, beautiful, like knowing of things that I'd contemplated, you know, thought about as I've, you know, gone through those existential crises, like what do you think about life? What's a purpose? All the things. And the other really profound thing was just this deep sense of love. Like my friend in New Zealand is very loving on such a deep soul level. And, you know, she's always got compassion for like the other person in a situation, you know, which is really beautiful. She really tries to think of the we-ness and the collective in terms of how she moves through the world. And I had this experience, like, you know, we all have experiences and, you know, I've had villains in my story. And, you know, as much as you try and kind of be that higher version of yourself and just kind of live with love and compassion and, you know that if someone wounds you, it's because they're wounded and they've got all these things going on. Again, intellectually, we understand it. But I got to say, I was struggling to embody it, to really feel it and live it. And through the medicine journey, that first one, I just had the deepest sense of love for the villains in my story, like so profound. Like the ego just was gone, like the ego part of me that was like righteous and yeah, but I'm right, you know, and da-da-da-da-da. It was like, it just was gone. And I was like, oh my God, it gets to feel like this. I don't have to be in pain. I don't have to be in suffering. I don't have to be victim-y or anything like that. I just get to have love for all of us.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first journey.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
But so it's what a gift for any journey, but especially your first one, to actually put yourself out there, be exceptionally vulnerable, because there's high stakes. If it could very well not have been that. I think the beautiful thing is more often than not, it kind of is from stories anecdotally that I've heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a wonderful place to come out the other side of. So I've done normal DMT, garden variety DMT before, and my experience was actually really, really similar to that.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember, did you ever get any synesthesia? Do you know what that is?
No.
It's when your senses kind of cross over and become they cross over. So
Yeah.
I had this overwhelming smell that took over my whole body that was exceptionally familiar.
Yeah.
And the smell was love. So I smelt true, pure love.
Yeah.
And I was overwhelmed with this sense of I'm home, I'm back. I was going somewhere that I had come from, that I had originated from, that I'd been before, and not only just been, but like where I came from. That was just so comforting, incredibly comforting. It was just like I was just being hugged from the inside with love.
Yes, and that's when we're connected to God.
Yeah,
that's God.
Yeah, and so then when you come out of that, you're like, I was like, how long was that? And the person who was facilitating said that was probably about 6 minutes. And I was like, fuck off. I was like, no, that was all of the time.
Yeah.
That was all of time I was in there.
Yeah.
It was just you just can't comprehend. And then you go, oh, timeless, right.
Exactly.
You kind of threw that word away,
it.
but timeless was a real thing.
It's real. It's like, oh, that's what it means.
and I remember thinking, how is everybody not aware of this or talking about this? Because this, I didn't think that something like that could be real. Like you watch movies to get something, to see a fantasy movie and then go, whoa, that's blown my mind. Imagine if that was real. But then you do psychedelics and you're like, this can be real. And obviously a billion times more real than watching a movie. It's truly mind-blowing.
It's so wild.
Yeah.
So wild.
Okay, cool. So you come out the other side of that beautiful experience. Yeah. What next?
Went in for my second.
You right? I want more. It's like Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah. It was wild.
I need more.
So the shaman offers the opportunity to have a second round, like if you would like to.
Oh, well, straight away.
If you do it like in a private setting, then you might kind of just take a little break and then you might go back in again. But because there was a group of 10 of us, so there's other people that went in between and then we sort of debriefed and then she'll just come back around to the first person and the rest of the group and invite you to have a second round if you want to. That time there was some people that felt complete with their first experience. They didn't feel the need to go back in. As we talked earlier about having a difficult experience. So as I came out of my experience, someone else had their journey next to me and then I think that they had gone and then someone else came. So I milked it. Like I stayed in that state even when I wasn't in the intensity of it and just allowed whatever wanted to continue to move through me and my body to do its work.
Yeah. So you lay there for probably 12 or 13 minutes.
Probably about 20 minutes.
Right,
yeah.
oh, wow.
Yeah. Like I really just was like, I just want to be in this and what the hell just happened. And
but still, it's such a short amount of time.
Such a short amount of time.
And a life-changing experience.
Yeah. So just give me 7 minutes. That's all I need.
Yeah.
I'll come back with love.
Yeah.
So then there was someone who then had their journey next to me. So I heard them go in. And then their experience was a really, you could call it difficult. I don't believe in bad trips because I think everything is for our higher good.
Interesting.
And everything is reflecting something. So I don't believe in bad trips, but I do absolutely understand the context of a difficult journey and a difficult experience. And the person next to me had a really difficult experience. And so when they came out of that, we kind of thought that they were traumatized. Like we were like, oh my God, are they okay? And, the shaman really was working her magic to contain that energy in that space. And it was really, really full on. And at the end, that person basically described having like numerous ego deaths. And they had questions around their self-worth, around their sexual identity, around shame, self-hatred, like all the things, right? So those parts needed to die off. So when we think about death is fucking painful. They needed to experience that pain to let go of those versions of self that were holding them back from living the fullest of life. Now, everyone wants to do the healing work, but they want it to be like sitting in a circle, meditating, doing beautiful sound healing with Laurel and all the wonderful things. And it just doesn't work like that, right? Because growth requires pain. It's like
growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So he went through a lot of fucking pain, like a lot. And at the end, he was just like, oh, that was amazing. And he said, I thought I was literally going to die, like physically, obviously, because he was dying.
Yes. His complete belief system,
all of
and
it,
the structure of how he viewed himself in the world, died.
Yeah,
that's fucking scary.
Yeah. And then I think he did a second round. I can't recall. So because of that, there were some people who were like, I think I'm good for today.
Yeah.
I don't know. After hearing that, it was very intense. But I felt called to, again, I didn't know if I was going to have the opportunity to do this medicine again. I didn't know what it was going to be in my world. So I went in for a second round and set intentions, the first round I set intentions, but this one is very kind of like specific around like my life purpose and, all kinds of things. And again, it was just like such a profound, euphoric experience. So what was interesting after all of that was I then spent, I think, 3 or 4 days in New Zealand with my friend, and we spent a lot of time resting and just, being in flow, but also, supporting one another, like offering our downloads, what was dropping in, what sense and meaning we were making of the whole experience. And I said to her, like, oh, wow, this would be really hard for people who didn't have somebody to talk to. Like if they were to just kind of go home and, they've got all this stuff and try and integrate back into their family. Like it would, I was there by myself, so I didn't have my daughter there. I didn't have other obligations. I literally had time to integrate, which is what I now know it to be. We were naturally just doing that. We were naturally integrating what had come up and supporting each other to make sense and meaning of each of our experiences.
How important do you think that is for the experience?
So important. Like, I just think you get this gift, right? This profound gift. Whatever medicine you do, you go through the trenches with some of it, right? There's usually at least some element of discomfort, because when we're facing ourselves, of course, we're facing our shadows. Of course, we're facing limiting beliefs. Of course, there's some part of that, or even if it's a desire of this is who I want to be, there's some part that's like, but I'm not that person yet. Shit, there's a discomfort that comes up. And I think that you go through this journey and doing this work to then not get the most out of it through integration, through making sense and meaning. So it's almost like with trauma, like if we don't fully process trauma, it's like it gets stuck in our body. That stress cycle is incomplete, and then it stores as energy, hence cancer, hence, autoimmune diseases.
You're right. So the conscious mind wants to just go, I can't keep doing this. I need to get on with things. Yeah. I've got bills to pay. I've got, things to do to survive in the world. I'm going to stuff that down there.
Absolutely.
But it's like literally sweeping things under a rug. Yeah. It doesn't actually go away.
Under our skin and into our organs, where we then get sick.
It just gets old and rotten and toxic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So I just think it's like such a waste. But it's almost like when someone comes to therapy, like the negligence of like bringing something up and not processing it, integrating it, and then sending the client out to live the rest of their day with all of this unhealed trauma. Like you've just brought it up to the surface, but then you're not going to do anything with it. So the person has to just hold that. Yeah.
Well, so what do you think are some of the flaws of just traditional therapy? Like that to me sounds like a pretty big one.
Yeah.
You stir up a bunch of crap in someone, great.
Yeah.
Because, let's get it out. Yeah. But you have to make sure you've really dealt with it, and that can be a very time-consuming process, right? Because we go back to the world, we go back to our lives. We may have changed, but the world hasn't changed.
Absolutely,
the world's the same world. So you got to figure out how do you be the new you with these new lessons that you've learned when the world that you're living in that has kind of helped mold you into this thing that you're trying to change is trying to do that like crazy.
Tries to pull you back in.
Because it probably resists your change, right?
Absolutely. That's what when I teach people communication skills, for example, and how to be assertive and, you know, start to speak up for themselves, I'm like, expect backlash. Yeah. Don't think the world is going to adjust straight away because it is comfortable with you as you were.
The dynamic is set.
It's so set. Yeah. Like your partner loves that you do everything he wants you to do, that he just has to make you feel guilty and you'll do what he wants you to do. Your children love that. So they're going to give you backlash when you say, sorry, I'm not available for that anymore. Like, you know, this doesn't feel good for me.
This isn't how it goes?
No, this isn't how it goes.
Yeah, stop that.
Yeah. So it's like expect backlash and look at it like this is great because I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And when you choose you over other people, love the fact you get to feel guilty.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it.
Okay, so these are signs that the sign of the guilt and the negative emotions are signs that, oh no, this is it. This is what it feels like.
Yeah. Well, you think about doing anything that's unfamiliar, it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then you keep doing it, and then you keep doing it, and then it gets comfortable.
That's a great reframing, isn't it? To be able to remind you, we just have to have the foresight to remind ourselves that the negative emotion means it's working.
It's good.
It's like if you're trying to lose weight, feeling hungry, great. It means it's working.
Exactly.
That you can't do it without that.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to change emotional behaviors, guilt, whatever the emotion is, if we can remind ourselves, oh, good, it's working. Yeah. I'm doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, well. So for some people that kind of suppress how they feel, we want them to get to a place where they can access anger. You know, so people might be like, oh, I don't want to feel angry or I'm at peace. For example, again, I'll just use I work a lot with relationships. So, you know, I've got a lot of relationship analogies. Someone has an affair and the partner might want to be kind of higher, as in embody their higher self and send that person off with love and say, well, maybe we're not meant to be together any longer. Relationships come to an end. They have this beautiful philosophy around it, but they've bypassed the processing of, fuck you.
You hurt me.
You hurt me. You did something that's deeply wounded me. And you can't get to acceptance and feeling that level of love.
By going around the feeling.
By going around it, you got to go through it.
Ah, yes.
And so, you know, often we want to elicit the very emotions that people are working so hard to suppress. Not everybody wants that. So not everybody comes and sees me.
Because it's hard.
It's hard.
Wow. Tell me this. Do you think therapy in general is more effective for women or men? Or do you think it's equally as effective?
Oh, it'd be hard to say that. I think that when you get the right mix of therapist and client together, magic happens.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I think it's, I just think that relationship is a key part of it. I think that, you know, research says it accounts for about 30% of change, right, in a person's behavior and their mental health or whatever. So there are lots of factors that go into contributing to it. I think, you know, the motivation of the client. I think the willingness of a client to really go deep into doing the work. But also there are a lot of therapists that have been taught surface level therapies and can't take the client where they need to go.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I mean is, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it just seems as though women, because there's more women therapists than there are men, it just seems as though women in general are more comfortable talking about their feelings.
Well, they love to talk.
Yeah, right. But are you saying maybe not about their feelings?
Yeah, they'll talk.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, though, if men are less suited to talk therapy.
Men love to talk too.
Right.
Women just don't let them.
Right.
Women just don't listen.
Interesting.
We don't like to hold the space because we love to talk. So often we talk over men. Often we become the masculine and we want to problem solve and we want to fix. And no man wants to be fucking told how to live his life.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So when I say we love to talk, like when women come into therapy, it doesn't mean they're willing to do the work. They love to talk.
Interesting. Yeah, these are two different things.
Yes. Yeah.
That is interesting, because I would say that perhaps men are more reluctant to talk, but if you can get them talking.
Men will not shut up with me.
Right.
They have so much to say, and again, research shows the depths of men's feelings are equal to women's.
Yep.
They might not have the range of feelings that we have. Like, we go on a roller coaster every day. We got all kinds of things going on, but the depth and the intensity is the same.
Sure.
Yeah.
On that human level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that women really underestimate the suffering that men go through. And there are so many women that don't know how to manage and regulate their own emotions. So they also don't have the capacity to regulate a man's. And again, when you think about everything that women are given responsibility for, children, the household, now like also going to work and providing, like it's a lot. It's a heavy emotional burden. So then they've got to kind of come and be emotionally available to their man when he's having a hard time. It makes sense why it's difficult. So I'm not blaming, right? Like this, it just is what it is. It's a dance in relationships, and it's a complex one. But when it comes to therapy, the men that I work with, just last week I ran a VIP day with a male client, massive transformations, like, and because he's so ready to do the work, he's been working with me for over a year, and now was ready to like dive in deeper, like, and really kind of get into it. And it's a lot of coaching and a lot of support around helping him to articulate his emotions, like having a language for it, because many people don't even know how to identify what they're feeling. Like, our parents didn't teach us, oh, that's sadness, or that's anger. Well, that's not anger, that's frustration. Like, it's new. Like, no one taught us. It was just like, oh, you're upset, here, have something to eat, or here, go and do something. Let me fix it rather than let me just be with you in your suffering.
Yeah, but or more accurately, let me mask it.
Yeah.
Let's go around it.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to deal with it right now, kind of what you said before, because maybe I'm not ready to deal with that. I can't deal with mine, so I can't deal with yours.
Totally. And you think about our parents, they don't have the capacity often to deal with their emotions at generations.
Yeah, well, they came from people who their parents went to war.
Totally.
They were convinced to go and murder people.
Exactly.
So, they did pretty well considering they're coming back from that. Like,
they're just in survival and coping.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm alive, it's a good day.
Yeah. So true.
I'm alive. We're doing good.
It's so true. You know what's funny? Like, recently, this is something that I've learned about myself. Is I do this podcast and I talk, and I'm relatively good at being open and vulnerable. But within my relationship, I've learned that I am not as capable of expressing my feelings as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I've only just started voicing that to my wife, to Laurel, in moments where she will be trying to probe something out of me.
Yeah.
And I've only just recently been saying, I don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how I feel right now because I don't know.
Yeah.
I need some time to figure this out, and I'm struggling with stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm annoyed that I'm not as capable at expressing how I feel as you are, or as I would like to be. But at least coming to that, I've found, has actually been healthy for me and for us.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that you can name that is such a step forward, because many men just shut down.
Well, I definitely do that.
But at least you're saying it now. Like, sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
It gives something. So for many women, when men shut down, which is a common coping strategy, they feel abandoned.
Yeah.
It feels like you've left this relationship because you have left it energetically and emotionally. Whereas if you can stay present by even just saying, I'm here, but I don't know what's going on for me, there's something. Like, there's something you're giving back.
Yeah.
And she's like,
sure.
Okay, you're telling me you need a minute. I can give you a minute.
Yep.
And then we're coming back to talk about this.
Yeah, because it's funny. There'll be times when Laurel and I will be having a discussion about something, and she'll say all of her feelings and tell me where she's at, and then she'll finish, and I just won't know what to say, and she'll be like, "Are you going to say anything? Like, why won't you say anything?" And I'm like, because there's literally nothing in my mind. Like I am thinking, like I've never had more of a clear mind in my life. I used to meditate a whole lot, right? And even then I never got a clearer mind than when...
So you need your wife to like complain and talk and then that's going to clear the mind.
Like there's nothing there. It's just tumbleweeds, you know?
I love that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating phenomenon. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm going to need time to try and process this because right now it's just,
Yeah. But these are the differences that like men and women don't understand. I heard someone the other day describe it like women think men are just hairier and more dysregulated version of themselves, and men think that women are more impulsive or more chaotic versions of them.
Yeah.
We're different.
Yeah.
And if we don't name that, we're already at this starting point that's like on a faulty kind of way of thinking and way of looking at how things are going to play out. So you have to kind of own that we are different and we have different gifts, we have different skills, we have different access to different resources. We're not the same and we're not meant to be. That's why we're made different.
Yep.
Yeah. God didn't fuck that up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
There's
bigger
a
than
reason.
Us. Yeah. This is actually correct. And you know, I heard someone talking about this with politics recently, which is not, I mean, something that I'm super into, but it is a fascinating thing to observe about how, you know, you've got the left wing and the right wing, and it seems as though the further left or further right you go, the more they want to eradicate. This side wants to eradicate this side and vice versa. But the analogy that I heard was saying, you realize that if that happens, the whole system implodes.
Yeah. Because
if it's too far, if it's too conservative, nothing changes and people go mental and there's no progress whatsoever. And it just dies. And on the other side, if it's too progressive, it's fucking chaos.
Yeah.
And everything dies.
Absolutely.
So you literally need each other. Like you cannot survive without each other.
Yeah.
And that was a fascinating thing to go, oh, wow, this is really important on a political aspect. But that also is just one facet of a human aspect.
But that just applies to everything about the universe.
Yin and yang.
Like it's literally as simple as that. That's what I'm saying, hidden in plain sight.
Yep.
It's all the same principles. Like we complicate it, and whenever like, you know, the ego comes in and says, but I want it my way, it's like, I always say, I say to my clients, like, especially when they're like hating on themselves or, you know, kind of, like if they've got shame around something, I'm like, are you saying like God fucked up when like it made you, whatever you want to call God, you know, source, universe, and it like whatever your beliefs are around God, I don't really care, right? If the word upsets you, triggers something in you to do with religion, find another word for it. It really doesn't matter. But when I say you understand that whatever created the sun and the moon and the beautiful sunrises and sunsets and nature also is the thing that created you. So either God got it right or God fucked it up. Which is it? Like, which are you going to choose? Like, we all have this place here. We all are here for a purpose, you know, the left and the right, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. Like, we're all here for divine union and to co-create and to live in harmony and be all the things. So you can't hold all of the different ways of thinking. Like when you want to beat yourself up, like you can't look at you as like this terrible, awful person, but the rest of the world like, oh, but you guys are somehow magically different. Like that's why I like to zoom out and be like, well, what premise are we coming from? Like, are we looking at life and existence like something created all of us? Or are we going to start saying, well, no, something good created all the good things and then something shit created me or all the villains that exist, all the criminals, all the, you know, like all of the people that I don't like and despise, all the people that I think are bad, somehow they got created by some bad, evil God and everything else got created by a good God. It's
a very literal fairy tale way of looking at things, isn't it?
It's wild.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a narrative. It's a story.
Yes.
So it's like, what story do we want to believe? If that one doesn't have you feeling good, choose a different one.
Wow. You know, was fascinating when looking at stories and archetypes, I found that I wrote a script, a film for a movie, and it was only until writing and learning how to write that I learned that I am all of the characters in the stories, the good guy and the bad guy and everyone in between in my own life, and coming to terms with the places where I am the villain. That's a bit of a shake-up.
Yeah.
Whereas it's quite a juvenile way of observing stories that the villain is separate.
Exactly.
And because I've never met a person in real life that's like fucking Thanos or some, the Ursula from The Little Mermaid. I've never met anyone remotely close to that.
Right.
The only thing that's remotely close to that is someone who's deeply mentally ill. And that's a whole different thing. And I haven't really met anyone like that either. So the kind of grown-up way to observe a story is to go, yeah, they're all me. And how do I navigate that?
Yeah.
Instead of going, no, what you were saying, the good guys, the bad guys, they're completely separate. But
Absolutely. Dr. John DeMartini talks about this, and he basically says when you are, kind of judging someone and you're like angry, take a look at what is triggering that emotion. If you want to shift that emotion, it's like when you judge a person for being selfish, where are you also selfish in your life? Because you're placing judgment on someone saying, well, they shouldn't be selfish, but there are parts in our lives where, of course, we're selfish. But that's somehow okay. So it's a really interesting way to look at and he says, like, we are all the things. We embody all the aspects, the good guy, the bad guy, right? Like the seductress, the virgin, like all of it. We embody all of it in different aspects of our lives. And when we deny that, that's when we become dangerous, because we deny our shadow self. We deny the parts of ourselves that actually will find a way to leak out unconsciously. And then we have no power, no influence because it takes over.
We're not even driving the bus.
Right? We see how many people, they go and drink alcohol and all these leaky energies come floating out when they're intoxicated.
Yeah, right? The inhibitions go down that are keeping them socially acceptable.
Exactly.
And then, you go, wow, there's some demons in there coming out.
Oh, but he's not like that when he's not, drinking. Yeah. Oh, of course, because he's working really hard to suppress that
keep
shit.
It down. That's
you see that rage?
Yeah. Wow. Do you think that, and this is a very broad term, but mental illness, depending on which mental illness we're talking about, can be healed? Because just what you were talking about then, where there's a place where you could kind of get trapped in a thought spiral where if I'm saying, okay, where am I? Oh, I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed that how selfish you are. Okay, now I'm going to observe where that means. I'm going to hold the mirror up and say that must mean that I'm selfish. Where am I selfish? And then get trapped in that kind of constantly trying to analyze myself too deeply in every little place. That could kind of, if that's unhealthily held on to, that could turn me into a bit of a nutter.
Well, it also turns you into a narcissist, right? You're so self-focused.
Right.
That actually you're not even then concerned about the world around you.
Right, because you're constantly reflecting it back to you. So there's obviously, do a bit of that. We all need to do a bit of that. But how much is too much? And do you think that those things can be healed or cured? It's essentially a form of mental illness.
Yeah. I think as I grow older and hopefully wiser, those words, like even healed and cured, just do not resonate with me at all.
Right.
And I think I just don't see the world or people like that, because to say that we're healed says, first of all, that we're getting to some point.
Yes. It's not an achievement unlocked. Can't go back now. Yeah.
It's a bit like self-love. Self-love is a practice, and it's an embodiment piece. It's not a place you get to. So when we use this idea of like healed, it says, I'm trying to get somewhere and then somehow I'm going to be okay. And who's the judge of that? Is this when our family says, oh, well, now you don't have such a sad mood, cool, you're healed? Or is it when we feel like, oh, I'm actually living my life and thriving, so I feel healed? Like, at what point do you where do you put that benchmark?
Yeah, okay. Well, let me be more concise. I guess to be in a place where happily, that's a broad word too, comfortably functional within society and within relationships with other humans.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean you have to. I'm not saying you have to conform to society in order to be a healed person, but being able to live within the world.
Yeah.
Like even this conversation right now, we're kind of talking about a lot of taboo shit, but we live within the world quite comfortably.
Yeah. We have to kind of keep one foot in. It's what's that saying? Be in this world, but not of it. So it's like, don't get so caught up in taking everything so seriously and thinking that it matters and that someone judging you matters and that whether you get that job, that it really matters, right? We get to be here, we get to play, we get to have all these amazing experiences, the things that feel really good and the things that feel challenging that actually inspire us to go on a different journey and a different pathway. So you kind of have to have, absolutely, like one foot in, one foot out. I see the same in terms of spirituality. People that have like 2 feet in spirituality, whole thing going on there. And then we've got people who are just in this kind of like material 3D world, whole bunch of things going on there. So life to me is literally about holding the tension of the two. There's always the opposites as we talk about the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. Everything in life requires us to hold the tension. Is always tension being held, right? The me and the we, right? In a relationship, like I've got to hold the tension of what do I want versus what's good for my partner and the we-ness. Always. So there's always this interaction that's going on. But I like that you asked the question around being healed, because I think people do have that mindset and they do see it as like this place to get to. Yeah, so I think it's really about authenticity. And it's like if you are being the fullest expression of yourself, like that to me is the purpose of life. Like I don't think there's any other place to get to. And if the fullest expression of you is that you are quirky, is that you have something unique about you, if you express your truth and people don't like it, but you feel good being that version of you, go do it. Most of the time though, people won't feel good embodying, even if we're embodying ego, like even if we're projecting a persona where it's like, I'm going to show that I know all of the things, it actually doesn't feel good. It actually doesn't feel aligned. Like when I forget what I'm talking about, I feel so much better when I'm like, oh, fuck, I just forgot. Like I lost.
Admit vulnerability, admit flaws.
Yeah, it's so easy.
Yeah.
It's like, of course.
I don't have to pretend. Yeah.
I've been talking about a lot of shit today. My brain's like, and because I go on a journey and I go on a journey with clients, like I'm in the experience, sometimes I get a bit lost in it.
And ironically, it actually endears you to other people when you admit that you've made a mistake, because people kind of go inside, I kind of go inside, oh, thank God. She's made a mistake too. Thank God. I've made mistakes before.
Yeah. Oh my God, we're the same.
Yeah.
It's a point of connection. And this is why when my clients are like perfectionistic, I'm like, it's not a vibe. No one likes it. Like, don't worry about it. So I think that whenever like we just aim for that, and if that is constantly the benchmark, am I acting in alignment with my higher truth right now? Am I being the embodiment of who I want to be? Like that to me is the path, as opposed to like curing anything, like, fixing anything. And, I don't know if you've ever heard of Abraham Hicks.
No, tell me about it.
So it's weird because I like the weird things. Right. So Abraham Hicks is basically a collective consciousness that a woman named Esther Hicks channels.
Oh, yes, I have. Yes. Okay, yeah. I have no idea how to feel about this. Yeah. So, tell me more.
So one of the seminars that she ran, someone asked the question around like, how do you explain basically kids with autism or, transgender, let's say. And their response, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting, like what they're going to come up with.
Well, interestingly, quite often those two things are in the same category.
Yeah,
I think the amount of people that identify as trans tend to be a lot of them are on the spectrum, which is a fascinating statistic.
It's really interesting, like where humanity is going, and I think it taps into something greater. And what Abraham said, which I really appreciated, was, and it's what you're saying actually about the left and the right. We need both. And when we think about humans, we've been so conditioned to show up in the world in a particular way, right? We've had, parents instill fear in us if we don't behave. We get rewarded for good behavior. We get rewarded when we excel. We get all this feedback that says, be this kind of person and you're going to be lovable. You're going to be admired. You're going to be revered. And that's what you should aspire to. And even though it's not our truth and we don't want it, as Gabor Mate says, we will always choose attachment over authenticity until we consciously choose not to. And we start doing the work. Yeah.
It speaks to the innate survival instinct for humans to belong.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always going to trump. And, we have to fight really hard to not fall into that. Even me, I catch myself situation at work at the moment, like wanting to be liked, wanting to please, wanting to respond in the right way and being like, am I willing to choose myself and my truth, which is something that I am dedicated to, over what will people think of me if I stand my ground?
Yeah.
Even now at this age and having done so much work, it's still there. So this is why it's like an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing choice that you just continue to choose to make to be the embodiment of who you want to be. So when we have, humans that are born with some kind of disability or, they've got neurodivergence, sexual issues, sexual identity issues, we can look at that and be like, you're not like me. You should be more like me. And so go change and be more like me. It's kind of what our parents do, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're not behaving like me. You don't think like me. I'm going to somehow punish you or correct you and guide you to try and be more like me. But we're not. We're us. Mm-hmm. People who are on the spectrum, people who can't change who they are, there's no choice to be made. So we can try all we want to change someone's sexual identity to try and get someone to fit in, to behave in public. But if they don't have the capacity, they don't have the capacity. So we have to change. Mm-hmm. We have to look at our intolerances and the way that we judge and what we perceive as normal, what we perceive as good, what we perceive as right. And so what Abraham spoke about is people come into this world as an opportunity for us, humanity, all of us, to grow. Because when we can't convince somebody to change, when we can't instill fear and have them conform and do what we want them to do, we either suffer or we make a choice to change the lens that we're viewing the situation through. Yeah.
That all makes a lot of sense. I often think, though, shouldn't we be waiting for a person to be capable of understanding how they feel about themselves? Like, what I'm getting at is...
So you're doing about trans now?
Yeah, I'm talking about like a child.
Yeah.
Because it seems as though a lot of these... you don't know what the fuck you're doing when you're a little kid. You don't know what you're
100%.
doing. I only kind of woke up when I was like 28. So for a child or a teenager even to be wanting to make drastic lifelong changes, my personal opinion is I just don't think you're equipped to do it.
Correct.
But I completely agree with what you're saying. There's a point. Let me articulate that better. I agree with what you're saying. I think, though, that there is not we can't decide that until we get to a certain point.
Yeah, on that issue, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When we have people with disabilities, they can't change that. Kids with neurodivergence, they can't change that.
Yeah.
But when we start kind of delving into that territory, 1,000,000%.
Yeah, they can be manipulated by social contagions and all kinds of swipey things on their phones that are telling them you'll belong here.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we look at kind of sexual preferences and identities, it's fluid. right? Like people can go through different points in their lives, like experiment and put on, it's almost like kind of wearing a different hat. Like I get to wear it, I get to try it on, I get to fit it, feel into like what it's like. And I might take it up or I might leave it because it doesn't align with me as I grow and evolve and become more of who I am. So when you're then going and permanently changing someone's trajectory when it comes to like their gender and how they're going to live the rest of their lives when they're children, absolutely fucking disagree, with being able to do that. Absolutely. I think, that's a whole other thing that's clearly taking place right now. Yeah.
On this kind of line of thought where we're talking about changing someone who or healing, the things that we were talking about being authentic, they land perfectly with someone who's dealing with some of the more common issues like depression, anxiety. How do you think that then this applies to someone with something more severe or complex like schizophrenia or, severe what we call bipolar? Or what do you think about the diagnoses and what do you think about the potential for people suffering from these things to transcend them or not?
Yeah, I think when we look at those kind of more medical psychiatric conditions, it is very complex. And, this is where medications, my beliefs about medications are kind of nuanced depending on what people are experiencing. And
do you work with people with these disorders? Or not really?
People with schizophrenia and say bipolar tend to be more with inpatient treatment programs and probably more with like hospital based, but they absolutely can be seen in the communities. So I think that, it is difficult because, again, what someone's capacity is that if you are so mentally unwell, like your capacity to go and be part of like society, and live your life to the fullest, it's somewhat diminished, right? Like it's not going to be like, I don't know, the regular person who's able to go and strive towards goals and achieve all of them and, be of sound mind as they're making their decisions through life. Like it's a bit more complex than that. So I think for a lot of those people, the focus is purely on keeping them safe, keeping the community safe. Right, harm minimization. So when we look at, I guess, these higher level things, so we think of Maslow's hierarchy, right, and reaching that peak of self-actualization. And I think there's actually a sixth level of self-transcendence, I think, and it's one that's not super common. People don't know about that sixth one. That's so beyond someone who's at that base level of just needing their safety and security needs being met, their need for food and water and shelter.
Sure.
You're really working on those basic needs, like for a lot of those people. Whereas when we look at, but again, you could kind of embed this work in that. It's like, sometimes people won't ask for food when they're hungry. Teaching someone how to verbalize and not have any fear around that's authenticity, right? Someone who, I had a VIP session with a client and it was so fascinating. This is like a fully functioning woman who's like paying to work with me privately for half a day. And she says, Shannon, I really need to go to the toilet. And I said, well, go. And she said, well, I know, I will. I didn't want to block your flow and I didn't want to interrupt. And I said, so you're there suffering so that I feel okay? Like what kind of coach would I be here with you if I want you to suppress your needs so that I can go on a rant about something? Like what is that?
That's a little kid kind of way of thinking and feeling.
Yeah, which is what we drop into, right? When we're in our state of vulnerability, we feel like a child again. Yeah. So I think that even in those small nuances, like absolutely you can support people. And again, with bipolar and schizophrenia, people are going to be on a spectrum as to how severe it is. But even authenticity just in those ways, expressing a need, asking for what you want, talking about how you feel, like you can absolutely kind of meet on that level, I think. And then, of course, as we look to sort of like I guess through personal growth and evolution, when we look at what does that mean? Well, authenticity might be, quitting my job and going and pursuing a music business, right? Like, that level of risk taking and trust and faith in yourself and your capacity. So I guess there's different levels that could be embodied. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's from what you're saying, it also sounds as though there are certain, perhaps I'm thinking about it the wrong way, there are certain mental states of mind or diagnoses that people have that are just perhaps like an amputee. You can't grow an arm back, and perhaps there are states of mind that you can't create something that isn't there.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, even though, and I guess the reason I ask is because I know that, and we know through science and studies that have been done with psychedelics, that psychedelics can grow new neural pathways. So I'm always intrigued to know how far can that potential go? And I guess as this becomes more and more used and studied, we will find out.
Yeah.
But that is a super intriguing place to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of the research and the exclusion criteria does tend to exclude people with schizophrenia, because there's just not enough research around it. And even when I did my psychedelic assisted therapy training in the States.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I did I think it was like 10, 11 months with the Psychiatric Institute in America. Yeah, so I did everything online. So that kind of came after my first journey. I felt really called. Like I was like, as you do, you come out, you're like, I want everybody to experience this. How can I do that? So I went and signed up for some training, and then when I went and did my experiential over there in December 2023, so just over a year ago, they go through like a whole battery of medical assessment to make sure that you're okay for the medicine. So the medicine I did there was ketamine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was interesting. That was a whole other thing itself. So you go through like all the medical kind of assessments to make sure that, your body is going to be okay, that you're going to be safe. Also, they'll do like a bit of a psychological screener. It wasn't a full-on like assessment, but just, if you've got any trauma, dealing with any high-level stress at the moment, so that they're aware. And again, it's about how do we support you? It's not like, oh, you get excluded because, we just don't want to deal with people like you. It's literally we want to keep you safe and contained, and we don't know if you've got these other things, we don't know that we're going to be able to do that.
Okay, it's a bit of a setting screen to make sure that you are in the right mindset.
Absolutely, yeah.
Before going into these, well, that seems to be from enough Terence McKenna that I've listened to. That seemed, and certainly from my own experience, that is
it's crucial.
Crucial.
Yeah, so crucial. Yeah.
So ketamine, derived from a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah. So it can be used as a sedative.
Yeah.
So it's what they call a sedative. So when we look at like the psychedelics, a lot of them work on the kind of the serotonin sort of pathways. And this one is like a bit different. Actually, I can't remember if it works on that same receptor site. Yeah, but it's used as a sedative, which is quite different to the other psychedelics, like MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, like they work differently. So there's a dose where, people have often heard of ketamine when they've come out of surgery or they've gone into surgery, they'll use it, in that setting. And so obviously there's a dose that then you can apply to healing mental health issues.
It does it. Yeah. So obviously it's in the class of psychedelics.
Yeah.
And does it give people like a hallucinatory experience?
Yeah. So again, it's interesting. It's a very inward journey. It's a very inward medicine because it's like a tranquilizer and a sedative. So you would think that you would stay still, right? So it's very inwards.
Well, you hear about people getting into a K-hole because people party on ketamine, right?
Yeah.
And then you hear these stories about people just, disappearing inside of
and then they get like these little what do they call them? The little like is it dinosaur?
Little tetanies. It sounds horrific. You want to do some ketamine and just disappear into the couch for 40 minutes,
It's so wild.
Yeah.
So that was just really interesting. And like, honestly, I wasn't excited about that medicine. Like, I just wasn't.
Yeah. I'll do it, but I'm not happy about it.
I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they also had a psilocybin retreat that I was supposed to do over there, and I was trying to put the two in the same time frame when I went over to the States, but just didn't work out. So I was really disappointed because, you know, here in Australia, obviously psilocybin's been legalized for people suffering depression and who are treatment resistant.
Where are we at with that legality?
Yeah, so like
Australia?
Clinics are up and running.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Practicing.
Yeah, so some people that I trained with, they've actually opened their clinic up in Sydney, and they did the first treatment. So it's really cool to like just liaise with them and, you know, see how they're going with all of that.
Wow.
So yes, it's happening, but it's so expensive.
To become a practitioner?
To become a practitioner, but to be a client, like it's very inaccessible. So hopefully something changes there. Like it's just got to. It's not accessible. And I guess the thing is, one of the things that I really hope changes is just, you know, the regulations around it, because I just see this medicine as being so potent, not just if you are. I always think about like when there's mental health, like we're kind of working underneath the surface, right? And it's like, we also need people to grow and expand, right? We can't be just trying to like put out these bushfires and have everyone be like okay to survive in life, right? Like we've got to have, you know, the artists, the creatives, like people who are going to go and create amazing programs, maybe for those people who are suffering with depression and anxiety. So again, we've got to work, you know, above ground as well as like below the surface. So when we get so focused on trying to fix like those that have got mental health issues through medicine, I'm like, what about the other people that haven't even started to unlock their potential? And a lot of the people that I follow who I would consider like mentors online, people who I've never even met, but I'm like obsessed with their content, their teachings, I would say if not 100%, I reckon 90% of them have all done medicine, continue to do medicine.
Well, pretty much every revolutionary musician, and this is something that's, you know, a place where I live, they've all done, you know, Hendrix, Beatles, you know, you name it. Yeah. They've all done psychedelics and created incredible art from it.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, what is your take on how the future of psychedelic assisted therapy could go, and the clash it's going to have with pharmaceutical drugs? Because what's your take on pharmaceutical psych meds? Because it seems to me like they're going to do everything they can to stop psychedelic assisted therapy because it works way better. Like there's no healing going. Look, maybe I'm coming across a bit arrogant. It doesn't appear to me as though we have healed. Yeah. And again, I keep using this fucking word.
It's okay.
The problems that pharmaceutical psych meds are addressing. They do put people in a calmer, comfortable place. But as far as we're going to put you on this medicine that's going to help you come out the other side, that doesn't seem to exist. There is no coming out the other side. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So like some of the research shows that what was the comparison? Psilocybin and could have been escitalopram or something like that. The thing that really makes the difference is the therapy part of it, right? So when they've created these protocols and they do, preparation, and then you've got the medicine journey, and then you're going and doing integration. When they did that same protocol with people who were on, let's say, antidepressants, the benefits were about parallel. So what they kind of found was that actually that the treatment approach was really significant. But again, the people who are trained to use psychedelics are people who are very skilled in a range of treatment modalities, which your regular therapist down the road isn't going to be, right? So if even they train to kind of do this treatment approach, like their level of skill, their ability to like work, you know, in these interesting ways, they probably aren't going to have it. So there's absolutely something in the therapy itself, in the way that you are prepared. There's particular protocols that can be used. But that was just one study. Like they've done heaps. But the benefits, the long-lasting benefits, and I think one of the most important benefits that they found, which you can't really measure through like kind of if you're just measuring depression rates, like obviously it's going to give you this much information, but what psychedelics do is they create more connection. They create a sense of oneness. They're expansive in other ways. So if you're not comparing those two things, when you're on, your antidepressant, do you feel close and connected? 95% of people will say no because they're so numb, they're zombies, they're getting through life and they can show up for work. They're not feeling it and then they're not connected emotionally.
Yep.
People on psychedelics, do you feel connected? Fuck yeah. So what are we measuring? So when we measure those things,
well, the difference too, though, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that no one's on psychedelics indefinitely.
Correct.
Whereas you're on antidepressants. That's the plan.
Yes.
Because you have to buy the medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, forgive me for pointing that out, but that's kind of sinister.
Yeah.
We don't want you to take the medicine and not need to keep taking the medicine.
Correct.
If I'm going to make money from you, I need to keep selling you the medicine.
Yeah.
Psychedelics their plants are like, no.
Yeah.
Have a little bit. We'll teach you some shit. If you do your homework, you won't need to come see us again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because that's been proven, right? Like with not everybody, but a drastic amount of people that have psychedelic experiences, like years down the track, they're still good.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. The effects are long lasting. It's not like they got to a point and then it dropped off. Whereas when we look at, say, happiness, people report feeling happier maybe for a period of time on any medication and then it drops off after a period of time. It doesn't happen the same way. I think that's just health in general, right? Like that's how the health system works. So what will be really interesting if we look at the States and we look at Mr. Kennedy over there and him like looking at health and how that impacts, because I know they're very much, and Joe Rogan's very much pushing for, psilocybin, Aubrey Marcus. Like you've got all of these like well-known kind of advocates that are like, why is this not happening? Why is it that we've got these war veterans that are suffering when we have medicine that could be helping them to be functional, to not be in trauma, to be able to, live a healthier life, to be able to cope with what they've seen, witnessed, and what they've done potentially.
I was talking to a guy, Elliot, recently, a good friend of mine who has these foundations where, for lack of putting it more eloquently, trying to save the world, these incredible like worldwide initiatives that can actually help people on a big scale. And he was telling me it's about incentivizing. That's where it starts, because if you can't incentivize the systems that need to change, they will fight to the death to not change. Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is, but I wonder what the incentive for the gatekeepers, which would be the big pharmaceutical companies, how do we incentivize them to embrace psychedelic assisted therapy, because it seems to be more effective. And obviously that's why you've gone into it.
Absolutely. One of the girls that did ketamine when I went to the retreat in America, she had a really beautiful journey, and she came out of it and she was like, oh my God, I have not been without depression and anxiety since I can't remember. And here I am feeling like I've just been reborn. She actually came out of it. She was quite funny. She was like, I'm a chrysalis. Like I'm coming out of the, she was literally like this. She was gorgeous. Yeah. And and so she had that feeling. So she had this anchor point of knowing that's available to her. And I think she said that sense lasted for like weeks. I remember talking to her and
the glow.
Yeah. And she was just like, oh, I'm like, reborn. And just felt that level of hope and optimism that goes when you're depressed, like that sense of, you persevere and intellectually you're like, oh, okay, I know that there's options and I know things get better, But within, again, there's that felt sense of like emptiness, loneliness, hopelessness, helplessness that might be there. And she said that feeling of hope and, you know, joy stayed there for a long time. And that was just one journey. So with ketamine, they tend to have a more regular protocol. And they do ongoing intervention with ketamine. So I believe in America, they have a lot of prescribers that ketamine is kind of their main thing over there that they prescribe and work with. Yeah. So people might come and have like multiple ketamine sessions. I don't know if it's like weekly, fortnightly, but they've got specific protocols. So I believe someone told me that we're using ketamine here, but I don't know that it's assisted therapy. So I think people are just being given ketamine to help them with mental health, but not the support isn't in place, which is such a big part of it. Because like we've said, if you're not integrating, if you're not processing, and my experience with ketamine was very abstract, like very, very different to the 5-MeO.
Hard to make sense of. And it would be what I would call a challenging journey. Right. So it was interesting to have the contrast, which again, I'm always grateful for contrast because I can have more understanding of what other people are experiencing. So it's like, okay, give it to me. And I've got some empathy and I know when other people talk about something, I'm like, oh, I recognize that. I know where you're at. So it was I left that experience literally feeling like I was carrying the sadness of the world within my heart and body. So it was big. And I think through a lot of the journey, I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And then afterwards, I just felt like crying. And I had the best time there. Like I was having a ball, like loving everything that was the first time I'd been to America. I'd been to Hawaii before, but that kind of doesn't count. No. Sorry, Hawaii, love you. So I really just embraced everything. You know, the people there were beautiful people, again, like-minded, where you feel like you're in this supported space and you can be your weird self. You can be the psychologist while also, you know, talking about spirituality, talking about, you know, God or transcendent. Like you can blend both, which is something I've always been about. But now there's more space for me to exist in that in between, you know, to be this kind of bridge between the science and the spiritual, which is what I feel like my purpose is in this lifetime. Yeah. It seems to be a more holistic approach because I don't know how good the results are going to be if there's really just one focus. I mean, well, we kind of do know, and they're okay depending on the individual. But so tell me, how did you go recovering from that dark ketamine experience?
Yeah, that one took a while because we were practicing, we were training. So, you know, the amount of time that I had available to kind of process that was limited. They offer, you know, support if you want to kind of reach out and talk to one of the mentors. But I just kind of engaged in my own process. And I think because I've been in some really dark places, I'm not afraid of the dark. So I just really kind of leaned into it. And, you know, one of the teachers there said something really profound to me when I came out of the journey. And she said, sometimes to know, I think the words are sometimes to know love is the biggest thing, we have to know the other biggest thing first, which is sadness. And I was like, oh, because I was trying to like bypass and get to love and get to all the beautiful things that I've experienced in 5-MeO. And it's like bypassing the depth of sadness and suffering. And because I'm quite problem solving is a bit of a superpower of mine. Like I'm very good at like not stressing. I don't particularly get anxious. I just sort shit out. I just make decisions. Like I'm quite clear thinking like that. I probably haven't experienced up until a point a sense of I don't know what to do. I'm powerless. I don't have any agency over my life. I'd have nowhere to go. And so I think that through that was just another invitation for me to sit in that experience, to not judge it, to not reject it, to not try and change it, but simply to be curious and to explore it and to to kind of make sense of what wants to be lived through me right now. Like, what is this that's emerging?
Well, it's probably a harder thing to do if you are better at not finding yourself in that place.
Yeah.
Because when you do find yourself there, you're like, fuck, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just sit in this? This feels awful.
Yeah. But the blessing in that, and there's another really significant moment where, again, I sat in the darkness, is I now know how to teach people how to move through that. And I didn't know that before. And I'm very much about, like, whenever I talk to especially my coaching clients, like, that want to grow and evolve, and I'm like, hey, let's sit with, like, this big thing that's there can be resistance to that. And they don't understand that that's actually where the gold is. So as I was saying earlier, when we go deep into the darkness and into the underworld, that's actually where the gold is. And so, that's where we can alchemize, pain into pleasure, helplessness and hopelessness into being empowered, or to not giving a fuck and being like, whatever, let me just go out and give it a go. Who cares? So that can be alchemized in that space. So, yeah, I just kind of like sat with it and let it kind of move through. And I don't know, at some point, like, it kind of lessened. I don't really know. Other than that, I'm not really quite sure what that was about. My sense is I feel like I've had a lot to purge. I think I've had a lot of sadness through clients, through, I graduated finished my master's in 2008 and started working with clients as a clinical psych in 2009. So I've been working with people in pain and suffering for, 15 years. And
it's a lot of energy to take on.
It's a lot of energy to take on. And, sometimes for a lot of my career, I was seeing kind of 8 people a day, like, just back to back. So while, like, logically and mentally I was okay, I wasn't like, I don't see myself as God where I'm there to change everyone's lives. I'm like, what's my piece of the puzzle I'm going to help this person with in this session? And then what's this piece of the puzzle like? And then it's for them to take that. So I would never take on that responsibility. So I never felt stressed in that way. But what I've come to know is the experience that my body has had is a very different one. So I actually think that I've had a lot of purging to do. And for me, it's come through, the form of tears. Yeah. And so I've had to learn how to hold space for that and just allow, even when it comes at weird random times, even when I don't understand why, it's trusting my body knows what I require and I'm going to choose to honor that above and beyond anything else and anybody else. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, observing it and let it out. Here it comes.
Yeah.
It's time to let it out.
Yeah.
This is, wow. So what other medicines have you worked with? On that trip you were learning through the ketamine.
Yes.
Where else have you explored?
So psilocybin is a big one, and that was kind of like, again, a new one. So like, I'd not tried mushrooms. Some people have tried mushrooms years ago. I hadn't. So yeah, I find psilocybin to be really, again, just a different, interesting medicine for me. Again, I have a more feminine yin experience, so I don't have visuals. I don't see colors and the walls moving.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never?
No.
Wow.
Yeah. Things.
And you've done higher doses?
Yeah. Things get elevated. Like maybe colors, the trees will talk to me and those kinds of things, like not with a mouth, but like, through osmosis and, those kinds of things. Yeah. But no, but when I close my eyes or go within, so this is why when we look at medicine journeys, often we'll use eye shades and earphones so that we can really go in. So that's how I tend to have a lot of my medicine experiences. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Do you think that, because I've always been intrigued about this, do you think that if you were to treat a mushroom journey, psilocybin journey, the way that people treat an ayahuasca journey, could they have a similar experience and a similar outcome? Because an ayahuasca journey typically is it's dark, it's calm, you're sitting, you're not outside exploring.
Yeah.
You go inward.
Yeah.
There's chanting, there's music, and you lie down and you go inward. Whereas the stereotypical mushroom journey is maybe you go somewhere in nature and it's daytime.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered if you treat the mushroom journey like the ayahuasca journey, do you think it can have similar results? Because that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. I think the medicine will give you whatever you need.
Yeah, whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. And, of course, the setting is going to hopefully deepen the experience and elicit more from it. But I truly believe we get what we need. And, I've been in journeys with other people that have had very visual experiences while simultaneously I'm there being like, I can't see those feet on the ground that you're saying you see. I can't see those Harry Potter disappearing feet that you see. I'm just not there. And then I'm having these profound downloads of understanding again the cosmos. Like saying to, don't you understand the cosmic joke? Like, are you getting it too? And I'm like, what are you talking? So very different. And, evening, dark, so I think the medicine gives us whatever we require. And I think for me, a big part of my journey and the embodiment has absolutely been around evolving my feminine essence. So that's where the medicine is really working with me. So I don't know if at some point in time that will change. I think to be able to be in our feminine, we have to be able to embody the masculine. Otherwise we have no structure. We can't be safe. Like we have to have, those skills and that balance. But, I've spent like 40 years being excellent at things and achieving and being driven and, like all of the masculine things that will get me success, to get me liked or whatever it might be, instead of actually being my truest expression, which is sometimes I'm erratic, sometimes I'm emotional. And some people are like, no, you don't fucking know what's going on in here. I might not project that out to the world, but I experience life and emotions just like all the other women. I'm just more skilled at managing it and moving through it and, finding that place of why is this here? Where does it need to go? What am I going to do with it?
And the mushrooms kind of help you. They show you this is where you got to.
Absolutely.
It's funny. That's just similar. I'll leave you with this because we probably need to wrap it up. But there's this beautiful memory that I have when my wife and Laurel and I were doing mushrooms. I don't know if she's comfortable with me telling this story, but too bad.
Sorry, hon.
I was off. We were at a park. She's sitting on the grass, and I was off, wandering around deep in thought and learning things. Yeah. And she has a similar experience to you where she's very driven. She's in her masculine quite often. And whenever she does psychedelics, she just embodies the feminine. Same thing when she does her sound baths. She just becomes, she surrenders and becomes, but yet is also so in charge of it. And I have this memory of seeing her off in the distance, and she's lying there with her arms back, and she throws her hair back, and she's got her leg up, and then she throws her arms in the air, and she goes, "Oh, the things I know." It's incredible. I can see it now, and it's just it was the most beautiful moment. And I was way off, and I was just like, oh my God, I just fell in love 1,000 times. It was really beautiful.
I've got goosebumps. Thank you for sharing.
Shannon, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like I'd love to have you back because there's so many things that we can dive into even more in depth. Maybe we can just do one in the future, just going into relationship dynamics. There's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that you've clearly gained, and thank you for having the courage to go into this stuff that's very naughty. You're not allowed to do this. This is naughty stuff. Yeah,
it's interesting. I was speaking to my friend's mum, who's probably old school and not necessarily open, and I mentioned psychedelics. She goes, "What, like mushrooms?" And I was like, yeah. And so then when I started to speak, and because she kind of respects me and, so she was more open, and I explained some things to her, and you just seen her like, it's not this story that they told us in the 60s that drugs are bad and they're going to kill you, in order to take away our power of sovereignty and, our own thought process.
Yes.
So I think that the more that these myths are diffused and people actually start to understand and get more educated, my hope and wish is that people become more open to it, because for me it's been life-changing. you know, and like I say, I work with people, I work with the mind, I have lots of skills and resources, and I can, without a shadow of a doubt, say that I would not be where I am today, which I love where I am today, if it wasn't for medicine. 1,000,000%.
It's happening.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.
Been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.